Roxy Soxy.
Good morning, Tab. How are you, girl?
I don't know. I feel it's my birthday month coming up, Roxy. I know.
It's so fun.
The funny thing, I don't even know if this is funny. I don't think this is a funny story. But back when this virus started, I thought to myself, oh, by August, this will be over. Like, I'm going to have the best birthday ever, because March to August, I was like, this is just going to be a 2-week little thing that's going to pass really quick. And I'll be like, by August, all my friends will be there. We'll be dancing, we'll be singing some songs, doing some karaoke. And then I'm still here.
We're gonna have a Zoom birthday, is what you're telling me. Are we doing a drive-by for you? Should we do a drive-by?
That sounds like a drive-by shooting. It's like, that does not sound like a good birthday.
Well, the good news is you're drinking again, so at least there's that.
I had one drink, Roxy.
She's back on the wagon.
After 6 months, and she's like, "Oh, drinking." Well, at least I've got a little more pep in my step today, because I'm kind of fangirling a little bit, Roxy. I don't know if you know the story. Can I tell you the story?
Tell me the story.
Okay. So back in the day when I was 16 years old, Sony BMG came and said, like, we want to record a demo of you singing to see, like, if we'll give you a recording contract. So I'm 16 years old, and there was this song, and it was sung by this incredible singer, Maya. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put that song on it's going to be my track to get that. So I remember I actually met my first boyfriend because I was sitting there in his recording studio singing, "It's after midnight and she's on the phone." And so when I found out that this incredible lady was going to come on our podcast, I started sweating and got so excited. If you don't know her, again, you don't know anything. She's a Grammy award-winning singer, dancer, songwriter, producer, actress. She's recorded 13 albums, sold over 7 million. I have not done anything. I have sold one album. So she is here, Maya. Thank you so much for joining Maya. Women on Top.
We are so excited to have you.
Hi. How are you, ladies? I'm so excited to be here. What a story.
The reason I had my first kiss, because I was singing that song and then kissed my first boyfriend. So you are really part of my life.
You're getting many people into the mood, Maya.
Seriously, to what song? Why was I the reason?
Well, because I recorded that song, your first song. What was the name of the song? But I know all the lyrics. It's after midnight and she's on the phone.
Case of the Ex. Case of the Ex.
Oh, that's so good. So
I would have thought you scared your boyfriend away with that song, not first kiss.
Oh, I was dancing. I was like grooving. He's like, she's cool. She's cool.
See, Maya, your music works magic. It works magic. Yeah.
It does.
Right? So
hilarious.
It's so funny. We're so excited to have you. I just want to know everything about you. I mean, you have a long history of music in your family. You started this business really young. Were you always destined? Did you always feel like you wanted to be a singer? Did you always want to be a singer?
I always knew that I wanted music. I always knew that I wanted music as a part of my life. I was always moved by it. My dad, of course, is the singer in the family, and my grandmother, a couple of aunts and uncles. But then on my mom's side, there are composers and pianists. And my grandfather actually orchestrated for an entire orchestra and wrote all of the sheet music out by hand. So it's in the blood. But I think at 4 years old, I just knew music moved me, and I could not necessarily articulate it, but I also was a child of the arts, around music all the time with dance or violin or piano lessons or just twirling the baton, the majorettes. I mean, it was just all around me. So I guess I was destined to kind of fall into music. I didn't necessarily know what a recording contract was.
Right.
It was going to be theater for me. It was going to be Broadway, and but the recording agreement happened first.
Oh,
you were super young when you found fame. Did the pressure affect you? Did you feel like you're also always chasing that dragon? Because fame comes in waves. You know what I mean? You can be up and then you go down and then you go up and then you go down. Did you find it a lot of pressure?
Being a child of the arts and being in a musical school and going to school for music, you just really love creating. But when you go into a music business, I think the agenda for other people around, because it is a business, is numbers or charting or sales and monetary gain. And that was never really a focus. Obviously, my mom is my accountant, so it's been
so smart.
A blessing to have her in my life.
Trustworthy.
Yeah, just to keep everything in order and teach me how to live simplistic, below my means or within my means, but never above. But fame was never the goal. I didn't know what that was. And I was a pretty shy kid until, of course, I had the platform of a stage or a common denominator of doing a routine with a group. I just really love creating as an artist, and I think fame came with it, but I didn't ever register what that was because I never chased that or dreamt about being famous. That was never really my thing. But I've always been a kid that was in my room by myself, like writing songs and stacking harmonies on this crappy little karaoke machine. I was a nerd back then. So I don't know. Maybe that's the quirky part of why I still do what I do, even independently, because I just love music. I really do. And it's therapy.
It's really interesting too, when you were coming up, like in the 90s, it was a different world as far as social media goes, like we didn't have Instagram and the Facebook and like all the things. So when you were coming up, because you didn't have that kind of stuff, do you think you missed out not having it? Or are you actually glad that there was no social media when you were coming up?
I'm so glad that there was not social media coming up because I was young as a woman. Coming into my own being and skin. And I think at that age, you're very tender and sensitive to opinions. You already have enough coming at you from corporate entities. And you understand it, or at least begin to understand that it's okay to take constructive criticism or follow suit for the agendas of people that have their mindset elsewhere, even though yours is focused on the art. But you begin to understand that. But along with the opinions of the world regarding who you should date or who you might be dating, there's absolutely no privacy with cell phones nowadays. And people are very, very mean, very mean online. So I'm not sure I'd be able to simultaneously juggle learning who I am as a person and coming of age in front of the world with all of the opinions, millions and millions being thrown at you. I don't think I was that strong of an individual back then, but now, it's fine.
I thank God that there was no social media when I was like in my young 20s and everything, right, Tammin? Because it's like some of the things I did like back in the day, I'm like, I probably would not have been good for that.
Your self-esteem is like, just think about like I feel sorry for our daughters, Roxy, because it's just like people are behind keyboards and they throw out hate because they have no repercussions, like back in the day when you and I were young, it's like if someone wanted to say something to you, they had to say it to your face, like there are these keyboard warriors that are faceless and nameless who can damage you beyond repair. You really do have to have a strong sense of self to be able to pick yourself up and realize that their opinions are bathed in their own hate and they have nothing to do with you. But it's hard to do that. And I think everyone gets affected by it.
Yeah. I mean, how do you deal with the haters, Maya? Like, what do do you respond back to them?
She has no haters, Roxy.
I know. How could you? I mean, look at her. Look at the girl. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely have my share of awful rumors and awful untrue claims, as well as being thrown in the midst of fire and haters, that want to see you fall or depressed or kill yourself. I mean, that happens. That's just the outside world sometimes, but there are great people in this world too. There's lots of love. And my go-to is always focusing on the positive, no matter what, because there's also positive and hate as well. It's just love inside out. And there's a lot of turmoil going on individually with those people that have that type of time in their day to go out of their way to say something awful to you. So then, as a mature woman that has actually spoken to young girls as a mediator or even a counselor, et cetera, or mentor, there's a lot of internal battles that people are suffering with. And sometimes that's therapy for them to throw some negativity out. So I just have to ingest it properly, but then also pray for that person because that person is going through an awful time because they don't feel significant or relevant. And maybe that's the only way that they can get the attention that they need. And that's really sad. So as a grown woman now, I look at things from a different perspective, but I am not the person to respond to that type of stuff. I block it. I delete it. I don't even want it on my timeline because then Twitter fights start happening or Instagram fights start happening, and then bullying toward that person starts to happen, and it just gets really ugly. So I just delete all of it.
It's funny. I always think that unhappiness, I've said this to Roxy before, unhappiness is the fastest pipeline to hate. When you're really unhappy, where does hate stem from? Hate stems from pain. When someone is in pain, they lash out because they think it makes them feel better, but it doesn't. It ultimately just hurts themselves. It's like putting poison in your own drink and then wanting someone else to drink it. But I do want to go back to the Grammys.
The big nights.
Can you please walk us through where you were, how you felt when you were nominated for a Grammy, and also everything that happened the night that you won? All of it. I want to know. I want to know what that feels like because I don't think Roxy and I are ever going to win a Grammy.
Oh my God.
There's always time.
No, sorry, Roxy. I just threw you under the bus. Maybe you will win a Grammy, Roxy. I'm so sorry. She's like, I have aspirations.
It was so amazing. First of all, it was surreal. I didn't expect it. I don't think any of us expected it until we found out that right after we performed, we were asked to stay backstage, and we're all chatting amongst each other saying, oh my gosh, what if we win? What if we win? Because they're asking us to stay behind the curtain. Does that mean we get to present to someone, or do we have to go out there to accept an award? We were contemplating last minute because I think we were all clueless. But I think the one hint that we did have was when Patti LaBelle herself, the originator of the hit before the hit, showed up to rehearsals at a building called SIR Sound Studios in Los Angeles, California. And then in rehearsals on the Grammy stage, of course, we're performing with Miss Patti LaBelle. Come on, we have to get a Grammy.
Oh my God,
I'm sure that was.
Were you freaking out, like seeing Patti? I mean, like having Patti LaBelle right there, like such an icon.
So surreal.
Of course, our parents' generation, all of them listened to Patti. We were very familiar with all of her art and her work, and she's an icon. And so the fact that she even cleared this song for us to be able to remake because it was a hit before we got a hold of it was an honor. A lot of people don't do that. And she joined us on top of that. And I think when we realized that that was actually going to happen at the Grammy Awards, it was just a tad bit of a hint, for us to kind of quietly and individually simmer on to think that it's a possibility to get a Grammy that night.
So amazing.
So from that point, we received the award. We thanked Miss Patti and all the players involved, and we celebrated, of course. But then we had to go do press. I don't remember going to any after parties. I can't remember, but I do remember this. I had an ex-boyfriend that was just so jealous at the time. And I wanted to see him. And get a congratulations, but he didn't even give me a congratulations. So I think
is that when you were done? Were you done then? I mean, that should have been a big indication.
I felt a sense of sadness because it didn't matter what I accomplished in my career. There was always some, jealousy or maybe insecurity going on with him. So I didn't feel really good that night when I went back to my hotel room. I thought, hey, I'd see him and it would be congratulations, but it was totally opposite and I never saw him.
So that was it? You never saw him again after that?
Well, no, I did. But things went downhill, obviously, from there.
It's so horrible that someone can ruin like one of the most important nights of your entire life, right? And you always look at people and you're like, oh, wow, I want to be them. But you were going through something too. And that's what I always say. Like everyone's got a story. And the fact that he ruined your night is not cool. Like you were thinking of something else when you were winning one of the most prestigious world awards ever. So,
was he also a singer?
No.
What does his name rhyme with?
No, he wasn't a singer. But I mean, I've kept that part of my life private so I can tell the story.
Except now.
When you're on Women on Top.
Yeah.
It was really interesting because you mentioned, you had these executives around you and, everyone's got an opinion. Do you think because you're in such an image-related business, did you ever feel like pressure to look a certain size or be a certain way? Were people telling you, lose weight, gain weight, do this, do that, like as far as image went?
Well, there was always something, but I never took it personal because it was either about a new hair color or, going to the gym to prevent injury. That was my mindset because I was already a dancer.
Okay.
I did hear a couple of comments at photo shoots from awful perverted guys, about getting implants or stuff like that because I'm this teenager and I haven't fully developed, but even if I never did, that's not your place. That's not your place to, rip or tear up a female's being and her physicality because it's not what you want or what you consider to be acceptable, valid, or beautiful. And I realized that there were so many different opinions and even arguments in certain meetings just about creative directions and egos going to war. That I kind of observed and realized that if I were ever to question myself and try to conform to everyone's opinions at once or even at different times, that I'd just be a rag doll because they're ever changing, first of all, and everyone has a different opinion. So being yourself is something that I was always comfortable with and solid in, and not changing. Because everything changed out there. It was just too hard to keep up with. But of course, it affects you internally. You can't just be the strong person all the time because you do ingest everyone's opinion. And then you do look at yourself and re-examine yourself. But at some point, you have to find a way to either journal and get out your thoughts to express your frustrations and find your center. And writing was always my savior. I would journal all the time. And usually it had a lot of curse words in it, to be honest. But that's how I expressed myself so that I wouldn't laugh it out. Yes, I do too. Yeah, I did it. Right. I did it today. But that was my go-to when I didn't feel comfortable or I felt embarrassed about those types of things. Pen and paper has always been my savior, dealing with stuff like that from the outside world.
It's amazing that you had such a strong sense of self being so young because it's such an impressionable age. And you could have gone a different way. You could have bathed yourself in self-hate, and you didn't. You had a strong center and a strong core, and you didn't let that affect you. It's funny, around the time of the Me Too movement, I said to my husband, I was like, I'm so lucky because that never happened to me. But then I really sat with it and just meditated on all the experience that I'd had since I was 17 years old. And I was like, oh my gosh, that Me Too has happened to me in so many different ways, in so many different forms. I just didn't think it was a big deal because it was accepted and it was okay. And they were older than you and they were your bosses. So it's like, it's okay for someone to be on set and say, oh, she needs bigger tits or she needs a big, like that's acceptable because everyone is looking around. There's 20 people in the room and they don't say anything. So it was an interesting, realization that I came to that in this business, there's so much of that. And I'm so glad that we are now talking about it because hopefully the future generations won't suffer the ways that we did. And someone will say, no, that's not okay. You can't talk to women, especially young women like that anymore.
Yeah, where does that come from, Maya? How are you so strong like that? Was it just like your parents sort of building you up, or was it like, where does that come from? Because you were young when this was happening.
Well, I never really focused on my image coming up. I was also raised with brothers in my household, and I was always the oldest. I had to grow up first. I was scolded first, disciplined first, and I had very strict parents. So my focus was to always be independent so that I didn't have to answer or succumb to ignorance. But I was also bullied terribly in school for being biracial, or the texture of my hair. It was just really different and weird. It's a lot more tame now, but all types of kids called me names. The list goes on and on, from wearing braces and being metal mouthed to zebra because my parents were black and white. I mean, you can't get away from it when you're a kid and you're in school, but it conditioned me for the real world, so that when I stepped into the real world, I'd already been through that. And the tears did flow when I was younger. And I had suicidal thoughts, to be honest, when I was this young girl being made fun of every day, didn't want to go to school. But I also found art, and I also found writing, and I also found that isolation is sometimes healthy. To love yourself, because that's when you don't have problems with the outside world. And that's where creation began for me. So I've sort of lived in this bubble, which is sometimes not necessarily personable and such a personable business, but it's protected me. And I've definitely operated in fear, but I've also survived in some of my conditioning as well as a bullied child. I'm used to all of that. And I don't think I would have survived in this business for that long, or any world or profession, if I didn't have those experiences. And so that also has crafted purpose for me, to speaking to young girls about these issues and just finding their own validation and definition of beauty or success, and or even happiness in an ever-changing world that kind of defines it for you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a hard time, I'm sure, growing up too, because like you're saying, especially with being biracial, if you're multicultural and things like that can't be easy. So how did you sort of navigate that when you were feeling the bullying, especially in that sense, and especially with what we're talking about now,
Exactly.
How did you, how do you think that relates?
Well, as a child, you don't necessarily understand it. It's very hard to articulate what's emotionally happening to you, but what the kids are saying are very mean, and there's a lot of laughing going on or pointing. There are a lot of stares in public by adults as well, or even chuckles and snares. So I think it was just an awareness thing that I became as a human being, quite in tune with as a child, knowing that something is wrong with the outside world, because this is pure ignorance. My parents didn't raise me to discriminate or possess any prejudice. They raised me out of love and treating one another fairly and like a human being. And so my outlook was slightly different from some of the ignorance that I did grow up around. But, we've also been through things historically in the United States that create that indoctrinated thought from slavery and standards of beauty. And what's different is usually made fun of. And to be ashamed of that is really easy when you don't have a strong foundation at home to reinforce that it's okay to be different. It's okay to be odd, but your different is beautiful. Maybe the outside world thinks being beautiful means something else, but there's all kinds of beauty. Look at the world. My parents showed me many documentaries and National Geographic and all kinds of other things, and PBS television at a young age, and allowed me to be a part of so many multicultural experiences through the arts, that eventually, coming into adolescence, I was a lot more strong-minded versus when I was a child and questioning some of the mean things that the kids would say. So it's upbringing, it's insulation, it's parenting.
Yeah, I think it starts in the home.
Yeah.
For sure, that you can pull from.
Yeah, I definitely, this Black Lives Matter movement, Roxy and I have had to look at ourselves and go, okay, well, how can we be better? And how, can we teach our children to be better? Because I don't even see, we're a human race. We're all incredible and amazing. And it's hard that other people don't see that. They see differently. And how do you change people's opinions? You got to get to the heart. Like, in the heart of the matter is that we are love. And at the meaning of life, I truly believe is love. And if we start to get back to that, then I think we'll start seeing much more peace in our world than this discord that we're facing right now. You know, my daughter, you're talking about standards of beauty. My daughter woke up the other day and she said, I don't want to eat as much because I don't want to be fat.
Oh, no.
She's 6 years old. And I was like, wait a second. Firstly, we don't talk like that in our household ever. We don't talk about body size or image or what we like or dislike. Even if I don't like my body in that moment, I never talk to her about it. And I said, well, where'd you hear that? And she said, well, on the cartoon. The cartoon said like, oh, I can't get through the door because I'm too big. And I had to sit down with her for 30 minutes and I had to say, you know what fat is? Fat is just not, it's just a thing. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is, you know? And so she grows up with a better sense of herself. I think it starts with the conversations that we have with our children from when they're a very young age, talk about history and talk about how we can change and talk about how we can be on the right side of history as they grow up, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Unlearning is the new learning. Because when you look at this world, a lot of the things that have been enforced by man to separate people, to maintain control and power, the way that we've compartmentalized ourselves or even divided ourselves is based on something that some man said somewhere, you know, and it's very ignorant. Just the systems that are in place. And getting back to the natural world is where I like to take my mind to sort of reverse everything that I grew up thinking about what I'm supposed to be like, even my measure of success. I have to constantly check myself and undo the last thought for my own self-validation that comes from early schooling. And what do you want to be? It has to be doctor, lawyer, et cetera, to be acceptable for your teacher. But even that is not necessarily everyone's idea of what success is supposed to be like. So it's unlearning this thinking that the world has succumbed to or surrendered to as the starting point. And it's all been crafted by this patriarchal system, which is not natural. There's lack of balance, which is why the world is in discord right now. And that's my statement. You know, no matter what the issue is or the topic is, it's getting back to the purest life possible. And that's, once again, unlearning what we've unfortunately based our lives on, an illusion.
Yeah, it is an illusion. Can't we just hand it over to the women? Let's have the country run by women at this point, guys, right? Like, come on.
I know there's not a lot of serial killers. I mean, there's not a lot of women serial killers, right? There's like women, even with the PMS that we have, right, Roxy? We're still going and shooting people.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though I was
reading that men actually have PMS too. I think it's just called TMS.
Oh,
yeah. Tell us about that.
Isn't it interesting? Is it a monthly? Yeah. Is it like a monthly cycle for them? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to start.
Is my husband always on the cycle?
He does have a period.
Yeah. But it just doesn't go away.
Yeah, exactly. So funny. Well, getting back to because I'm so fascinated by, your whole performing life, which is so cool. What is the craziest thing that has happened to you while you've been performing on stage?
While we're talking about periods, all white.
Oh my gosh, tell us. On the white couch and someone very important.
That actually happened. I don't know if anyone caught it. I hope not, but that was so embarrassing.
So what
that really happened?
Did you feel it? Did you feel it happening or you saw it happening?
I thought it was over, but it wasn't. And I've never told the story before.
Okay. Tell the story.
I just know, oh my God. I'm not going to even say his name.
But, oh my gosh, everyone talks about everything on this podcast.
Yes.
Yes. I just remember R. Kelly was performing that day.
Oh.
R. Kelly was performing on the same stage that day. But it was in Chicago, and I put on this all white outfit, jeans, by the way, white jeans. And I had maybe like a 20-minute set because it was still pretty new to me, early in the game.
Okay.
And it was an arena, a stadium, and the crowd was huge. And I just remember feeling like, okay, that was a drop. Something just dropped here. I have to finish my set and I don't know what's going on. So when I got backstage, it was confirmed, when I got off of the stage, I changed my jeans really quickly. But of course, it had to be an all white day. And all the lights, I'm sure someone saw it, but I altered my dance moves just in case.
Everything is like closed leg. All of a sudden, you're just like
you don't do any turns.
No, walking from side to side profile, no crotch shots.
My mom would hate me telling the story, but when she was younger, she was just got married to my dad. So she was like 24 and she went to the bosses. She just got hired for this like really big position. And she went to his house and he had this white couch and she sat on the couch and she got her period. Like it was like the first day when it's just a gush and it went all over her boss's white couch and she didn't tell him. And it was like a beautiful, like it was not going to come out. Let's just put it that way. So she put all the pillows on top of it and just like left the party. And like, she's like, I don't know what happened. That's what I would have done. I wouldn't have said anything.
No way.
I would have just signed an autograph, art by Maya.
Turn it into art. I mean, it is, right?
Honestly, it is. It's art by God.
Right.
Thank
exactly.
you.
Exactly. So what about like stage fright? Have you ever had to deal with that? Like, has it ever been like, have you ever had like a moment?
Yes. There were 2 times that my blood was boiling.
Okay.
So Dancing with the Stars 2009.
Oh, yeah.
That was live television. I think it was ABC. So millions and millions of people are watching. And anything is bound to happen in rehearsal. Like a couple of buckles came off of my shoes, heels broke, all kinds of stuff would go down. And then you have to worry about wardrobe malfunction because your partner is lifting you up in the air, tossing you, turning you, and you're sliding across the floor. And so your mind is going so many places, plus the nerves of just having to wait and then get it over with. I hated that feeling I think it was Monday or Tuesday night that we would film, but the ultimate stage fright because it was live on television and you can't edit, you can't delay much, but maybe 5 seconds, but that's it. If you fall, if you have a wardrobe blip, it's done and you're all over the press. So I was really worried about that, but I got through it. And opening up for Prince twice.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I just felt like I would have to rehearse for an eternity to live up to his standards. And just the fact that he asked me to open up for him in London 2 nights in a row. I rehearsed for like a whole month before I got on the stage before him, but I was completely stage fright just because I wanted to do a great job for this phenomenal being.
So you worked with like
I was just gonna say, what was Prince like? Like, was he everything you sort of see on TV, or was he so much more?
So much more, of course. And he became a mentor actually with business and definitely directed a lot of us artists who were independent at the time. This is at the beginning of my independent journey, to own their masters, to make sure that they play an instrument, that there are no samples in their albums, to really perfect your craft and not focus on materialistic things. And that the world was yours if you do everything that you're supposed to and take no shortcuts. So a lot of his words would just stick with me in those uncertain moments or those tumultuous moments in my independent career. But it paid off because I got nominated for a Grammy, and a full album of mine that I executive produced got nominated for a Grammy when I applied everything that he would speak to us artists. So he was everything and more, and a lot of fun through all these great house parties and jam sessions. but was truly concerned about the next generation in this business, because he'd been through so much and wanted to really see us win. Yeah, in so many ways. So he was filled with lots of love and wisdom.
What do you think about the next generation that's coming up? Do you think they're taking shortcuts? Because what you said about the work is like, I feel like it's all about that, and if you don't do the work, then at some point the jig is up. Like, you can fake it till you make it for as long as you want, but then at some point it has to come down to if the work is good, and if you have good material.
It's really a tricky question to answer because we live in the age of technology where sometimes it's not about the music or the art or the talent. And I don't think it's ever been in the entertainment business. It's about the wow factor or sometimes the controversy, whatever's going to pick or push the numbers, because it's show business. So in art, of course, you cannot take any shortcuts. In theater, when everything is live, you have to do your studying and your homework. There are different platforms where, you'll get found out, like singing live. But, when you have an opportunity, you can always, as a student, I believe, play a game of catch up. And learn as you go and absorb, especially when you're around the greats. We never start knowing it all unless you're just this musical genius, etc. We all have space and room to grow and learn and perfect and become better. But when opportunity knocks on the door, as it did for me, I'm light years ahead from when I first started. And a lot of people or friends might have thought that I didn't deserve the opportunity because maybe in their eyes I wasn't as prepared as they thought I should be. But there's a market for everything, and to each his own. Not every genre or style of music or synthesized keyboard music or just a beat, it shouldn't be disqualified because it is a sound and it is a culture. So I really believe that whatever you do, however you'd like to receive it, if it's a game of longevity that you're trying to achieve, then yes, no shortcuts are an option. But if it's a game of get in and get out and get what I can, you can really survive, and then create another business and do something else, especially now because you can do it yourself on your laptop as far as being a recording artist.
Right.
Yeah. But new things are birthed. So it's a really difficult question as an artist, but also being a business person as well and understanding both sides. It's a balanced answer that I gave you because I see a lot of kids winning that are making movies and videos on their iPhone that are not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're taking shortcuts. That just means that they're very savvy and
they're
doing what they exactly.
I mean, I think about
a lot of great directors are pissed off about that.
Right. But imagine you want to direct something and you just don't have access to the money that it takes to make something for $100,000, $5 million, and you still have the talent. So I think that there's so many platforms now that you can showcase what you got, and I think that I think talent is talent. You can be talented on an iPhone. You can be talented with $500 million doing a Marvel film,
Right.
I just think we just have more devices now to get our stuff out there.
Yeah. And if they have the drive and the ambition to do that and they go after it and make it happen, more power to them, right? If they're out there, doing their thing, it's a different way that they came up, but they're still coming up, right?
It's given the stage to, I think, more people. And I think, the competition is probably higher because there's more visibility. There's no, I always say that you're invisible until you're seen. And now there's so many ways to be seen. So there's more competition. And that does raise the bar sometimes.
Yeah, do you feel that competition, Maya, with any of your peers or any of the other, the singers, performers out there? Do you have that competitive sort of drive?
I definitely have a competitive drive. I think it's more of a grind, but it's never me competing with another person. It's always trying to improve myself and evolve and just challenge myself to learn and become something better than I was last. And obviously being a better person first, but evolution. And I'm still in love with music very much, but I'm constantly educating myself on the new technology or the new platforms. And I think the biggest pressure that I've felt was coming from a major label system into the independent label realm where I'm now the label and funding everything myself, which has taken a different type of focus and grind, where personal life suffers, but also living up to the expectation that being with a major label has set. You know, it doesn't matter how many projects or how great of the compositions or the songs that I release. The world, of course, without the marketing dollars, et cetera, is not receiving it the way they used to from me. So sometimes you get lost in the sauce. So that can be a juggle personally, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, it affects you. But the work is put in. And so the mindset changes from wanting your glory now to just putting good things in the universe and just trusting that good things will come back in its own time, not your now. You have to set your ego aside, you know, and artists are supposed to have egos. You know, we want what we want and we want to serve all the time. But you also battle yourself as this business entity that has to make the business decisions, but then this creative artist entity, and they bump heads all the time. So it's a game of juggling constantly because you want to put things out in the universe and hope that they're received very well. But there are a lot of things that have to take place first on the business side.
Right.
Anyhow.
Do you regret anything that you in your career, especially, you know, you touched on in your personal life? Do you feel like because you were so gung-ho in your career that that was affected?
I was never gung-ho in my career. I was always wanting to be a priority versus getting lost in politics or, you know, label execs arguing back and forth about who's taking credit for what, you know, or getting caught up in budgets closing or merges happening between labels. There were so many dynamics out there that affected a lot of artists. And then you get caught up in that. But, you know, mine was circumstantial. I never had a diva moment or anything like that. But I did have an album leak that shelved my fourth album, and that prompted me and propelled me to go into the independent space, which I don't regret. You know, it of course was devastating when you work on something for 2 years and transition to different labels and the interim, but that also led me to Prince. If I weren't independent at that time, he would have never become a mentor, and I would have probably never met him before his passing. And he's just given us so many jewels. So I don't have any regrets, except for maybe my choice in men. But those,
I think we all have those regrets. Like, I wish those 3 or 4 nights didn't happen in my life.
But those were also blessings and lessons, you know, that have allowed me to become like this healer or whatever you want to call it for other women and relate to women globally that have gone through some of the same things. So, I mean, I'm very fortunate that I'm alive and I've experienced those things. I have loved fully. And, you know, when I get into my own headspace, I sometimes wish that, why did I have to go through that hell? You know, and then I accept the hell because beautiful things happen from that too.
Right. So are you normally like a relationship girl? Are you like a serial relationship girl, like long-term relationships, or more like casually dating? Like, what is your, because you've been really good about being private. Like,
yes,
not
we
a
know
lot of people
we like did so much research and we're like, we don't know anything about our relationships or our love life.
I'm like, who is she dating?
Yeah, I think it's relationship for me. It's always been relationship, but somewhere along the way, because of course, you know, I'm a workaholic, and then the dynamic of being this famous person and having to go all around the world. I don't know if it's the insecurity that comes into play, but this double standard always creeps up into the relationship where the guy becomes narcissistic and wants to maintain a chokehold or control over me, but wants to play the field simultaneously. And then the threats arise or the accusations arise, the things that he assumes that are happening in the studio or on the road, or things that maybe he's done or witnessed other people do. And it's just, it becomes too much. So today I'm now in self-love mode and really accepting my space and time and really enjoying that. I'm practicing self-care. And like I said earlier, I believe the work that you put into yourself, you get from other sources with law of attraction. And that's all my priority is, because I'm not pressed to be in a relationship or loved by anyone. I think it's a beautiful thing when it's functional, but when it's dysfunctional, I don't want it. It's too much of a headache, you know?
Yep, that's true. I get it. Well, you also have a very big life, you know, and not maybe a lot of men can't handle that, right? No, but like as far as being a public person and, you know, you're famous, you're an amazing performer, you're beautiful, you're successful. I think like a lot of men can't handle that, right? Like, or it takes this very special man to handle, you know, somebody that's such a great package. Yeah. Exactly.
He has to be secure with his own life and himself first. And I think that was a problem, obviously, in my early relationships, because there was a lot of demand for me to obviously prove myself at that point with record labels. So I was constantly on the go and constantly getting this attention that just came with the territory that I wouldn't entertain, but that fear of getting snatched up by someone with either more money or that's more handsome than them is looked at as a threat. And for some reason, they think you're going to entertain it. But that's based on an insecurity and fear. And then they begin to destroy the relationship because of all of that fear, and then accuse or do things on purpose behind your back, you know, to create balance for themselves. So it's really strange. Looking back now at the actions, but I really find solitude within myself, and I don't really have any more expectations, but I do believe in love, and that doesn't necessarily come in the form of man, woman, 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 one-on-one relationships, whatever it is. You can find it within yourself, but also be surrounded by all kinds of love, whether it's your extended family or the children that you work with or the animals that you adopt. I mean, there's so many different sources so that you're not reliant upon, you know, a narcissist.
I hear you.
Or someone that's not ready for the whole you.
Right. No, she's so amazing. And also you just mentioned the animals, which I love the animals too. And Tammin loves the animals too. We love the animals. You're a vegan. You promote animal advocacy. Why is this world so important to you?
Well, animals have probably saved my life and my mind. They are healers. Sometimes we think that we save them, but they really save us. And they're just so pure in their energy, and they don't have any hidden agendas. And
they're not narcissists.
Well, my dog, you know, his only
they
agenda
do try to control you.
But, you know, they're just breaths of fresh air, and there's just so much happiness and pure joy when they're around, including children. I really enjoy my time working with kids. I was a dance instructor first. You know, that was my first job. So the light that children bring, yes, they can cause you to go hoarse and pull your hair out or go gray very early, but they're very honest. There's just
so many things they can do.
Yeah.
So many things, but there's just so pure in their intentions and their unconditional love, and they raise your vibration. They really do. And I'm an advocate for animals because they've just done so much for my life. The same with the children. And they, you know, they deserve incredible treatment. And there's just so much abuse, obviously, in the world that many people don't know about. And so that's where also my vegan activism comes from. Knowing the harsh realities of the manufacturing and production of animals.
It is.
I saw Food Inc. once, and I was just like, once I saw that documentary, I eat eggs now, and that's it. I'm sure I'm like one step away from being vegan. I kind of say I'm vegan, but I know if you eat eggs, that's still bad. But I think it's pretty good that I don't actually eat the animal. But I saw that documentary, and I was like, once you see the atrocities that are happening, you can't unsee that, you know? And I think a lot of us walk around like ignorance is bliss. And I do that too. Like even right now with the news, I'm like, I don't want to know. I can't know everything that keeps me up and makes my anxieties worse and makes me, disconnect from my kids because I'm so thinking about how many people are dying from COVID. I need to know. I need to be informed, but I don't need to be obsessed about it, right? But I think once you really see about the horrible acts that are happening right now, especially in the animal world, it's hard to unsee that.
You can't unsee it.
Yeah, you can't. And what do you think the biggest misconception about veganism is? And how do you think it can potentially like save the world? Because I want to hear your answer on this, but a lot of the documentaries that I've watched talks about how we can really fix global warming if we stop eating animals.
Well, yeah, to touch on what you spoke about, we're not really ever educated or shown the actual realities of, animal agriculture and some of the harsh conditions and abuse that animals endure for food consumption. The misconception about veganism, well, usually even my own family has teased me on many occasions and spoke about rabbit food, but it's not that at all. As a matter of fact, I'm hosting my first virtual cooking session on August 1st as I kick off my 3-day reset challenge, which is vegan, raw vegan, alkaline vegan, or even juicing. And people end up combining the challenges, and I gift winners with all these goodies for their kitchen, et cetera, to help them on their journey. And I have a free starter guide. It's on mayamaya.com/lifestyle that I compiled. Lots of information with. And veganism, it's just about compassion and understanding how everything is connected, but it's very tasty food. And you can still have what you already love by simple substitutes. There are vegan pancakes, waffles, even chicken. Now plant-based meat companies are creating all kinds of burgers and substitutes or plant-based versions of even seafood now to feed into or accommodate, I would say, to accommodate what people already love, how we were raised, what we grew up on, so that nothing has to be stripped from your daily palate. And it's really, really fun because you can do all different types of versions. Obviously, you have the more starch processed foods, which aren't necessarily healthy. And that's also a big misconception. Veganism doesn't necessarily mean healthy because fries and rice and potatoes and
all the good things
and starch are still vegan, but it's about having a well-balanced diet and then choosing the healthier alternative, like wild rice instead of the white rice, or spelt flour instead of the white flour. There are levels to it, and I break down those levels in my starter guide because I've really learned, even after gaining weight, becoming vegan, because of course I was a carb queen, that this is not the right way to do it. So how can I get better? And that's why I conducted the challenges, so that I would even take accountability and become a better, healthier eater. Why? Because cancer and diabetes and heart disease runs in my family and community. And I just wanted to break the cycle and the generational diets that cause the generational curses.
Those burgers taste exactly alike, by the way, to like real burgers. Because I know a lot of people are scared. They're like, oh, it's not going to taste the same.
Yeah.
They do. They do. Thanks to beet juice, they bleed.
Yeah.
But they do. They taste just the same. Even better, I think.
I think that's the key to your happiness, though. I remember when I was juicing so much and doing raw foods.
I mean, the wave of vegan life is advancing every year. It's $1 billion+ industry. And more people are getting hip to it and the effects on human health, but also environmental health. So you touched on global warming, and, factually, the research has been done, and it basically states that animal agriculture is the number one cause of climate change / global warming, above and beyond all worldly or global emissions from transportation combined. And so when I think about that, how do I wrap my brain around this and share that with fans? What is animal agriculture? What are emissions? And that's what the starter guide is there for, to basically break down the reasons why to go vegan and how it impacts everything, all life, not just human life or human health, but the entire species, extinction, habitat, the destroying of habitats and ecosystems, the fact that we might even still have issues with our ocean and fishless oceans by the year 2048. These are all scientific predictions just based on how we produce food now, and many of the things that we put inside of those foods or treat animals with, that end up in our waterways. And it's a domino effect, but it's all, it's a weird subject. When you go down the rabbit hole, you realize all of the connection that affects each and every one of us and every living being. And it's really hard to digest once you get started. You don't want to stop the knowledge, but then you're forced to sort of make a change, and it's very uncomfortable.
It is. Have you been cooking a lot in quarantine? Like, have you been cooking vegan foods and like doing the thing? What are some of your favorite things to cook?
I have been cooking a lot, which is why I made sure that I conducted another challenge so that I would go raw, because I was consuming a lot of vegan junk food and gained some weight. But I began cooking for family, which was awesome, because usually my family is teasing me about my rabbit food. And so I cooked some soul food. I cooked some mac and cheese that was vegan, some meatless meatballs with cheese and ragu sauce, collard greens, Japanese sweet potatoes or yams, just all the things that my family grew up eating, but veganized. Chili, vegan chili. The list goes on and on. Just the other day, I made some oysters from oyster mushrooms. They were fried oysters. And then some fish and chips from banana blossom, which I found in an international market. So I've been playing with like things that I've never heard of before as well.
You're like advanced level cooking. I mean, that's like, if you're creating oysters out of
We're doing frozen pizza over here. Roxy and I were putting some frozen soup. And we're like, that's dinner. The quesadilla is dinner, kids.
No.
It's funny though, when you take away meat from people, though, when you take away meat from people and you say like, oh, don't eat meat, they get very angry. Do you notice that? They get very, very, very angry.
It's like guns when you try to take their guns away.
Don't tell me what to do. So my thing is, why don't we just try to be better? Like, why do if people don't want everything, if their perception is like, don't take away what I enjoy, why can't we just say, okay, cool. So let's do 3 days no meat or 4 days no meat. And what starts to happen when people do that, they realize how great they do feel. Then they want to understand why they're doing it and the reason behind it. And then they start getting more into the vegan lifestyle and their life changes. So maybe the first step is just saying, hey, let's just do meatless Mondays, right? See how you feel. Maybe meatless Mondays and Tuesdays. I think small steps is a way to like get people's habits to change instead of saying like, no more meat ever again, because I think that does scare people.
That's why I have the 3-day reset challenge, because it's super easy for anyone to do. And I'm guiding people on Instagram Live. And now I've added a cooking session virtually. But the approach is very important. The approach is always important because we're never taught any of this stuff. So you begin introducing very, very shocking facts, about vegan life and why to go vegan. You have to spoon feed people, but also your approach has to be very respectful of where people are in their lives, then get into who they are, what they like, and then begin to provide suggestions, not commands, not demands. That's very invasive. So knowing people, having people's skills, and then also making it fun with incentive, and then being a walking example of that as far as what or how it's benefited you. Showing those people is very important. And being an example of that is even more important. But approach is everything because it can be very discouraging.
I will remember that without my husband.
That's
approach is everything, right, Roxy?
Right. I'm going to have to lock that in the bank. And I'm like, okay, it's all about the approach. Yes.
Yeah.
It's so true.
But making it an event is cool. Making it a fun family event is cool.
Well, we've got one or two more questions and we'll let you go. In this interview, there's two things that you give off, and that's empathy and vulnerability. And those are the two things I'm really trying to work on. And I see you and I'm like, oh, that's what that looks like. Empathy and vulnerability, because I need that. I need to understand people more and be empathetic about their stories and where they're coming from, and not using my own ego to stand in my way, and being open and honest about the things that I'm going through, which you have. And I'm just so grateful that you spoke to us. I think you're such a bright light in this dark world right now. I've felt like I've taken a bubble bath, and put there's a piece about you that I wish that I had, that I'm trying to find. So my last question is, what is your greatest advice just for anyone out there? Because I'm a fan and I would love to know what your greatest piece of advice is.
My greatest piece of advice is to look inwardly instead of constantly outwardly for answers on life. But when you do want to look outwardly, download the Night Sky app and you will begin. Yes. And I'm big on outer space. Even as a little girl, I used to pray to the stars because I knew something was divine about that, and man couldn't alter that. Man couldn't touch that. Humans didn't have anything to do with that. Not that I could recall or understand. But that's one of the ways that I take myself off of this earthly plane and then begin to just process the insignificance of my thoughts and issues, because usually they're revolved around all of this earthly madness and mentality that, of course, I've adapted to. So I have to take myself out of the equation. And how I do that is connecting to my center. People, all of these yogis say it all the time, but that's one of the ways that I do it. I go outside at night and I look up at the stars, and I'm in this vast creation of creations, and realize the scope of just this one galaxy amongst billions of galaxies, and this one visible universe amongst possibly billions and trillions and gazillions of universes. So I start thinking like that, and then all of my problems begin to dissipate into something less significant on the grand scheme of things. And that's what I constantly have to do. So download the Night Sky app. I probably sound like a nutcase right now, but that's how I find my peace, because it can get very chaotic in the mind based on the chaos of the world and all of these standards and all of these ideas and systems to conform to. And it's just not healthy. So space and time, that's what I like to take. And that's actually the new single for those reasons. Getting back to the natural world and spending time in nature. Nature doesn't ever rush itself. Aligning yourself with those types of environments has definitely provided a lot of healing for me, where I can go back into the world that we know to maintain my peace and maybe count to 1,000 if I need to before I snap. But those moments are key for me to function as a human being, like you said, in such a confusing world, in such confusing times.
Speaking of these times, has the pandemic been a creative time for you? And you mentioned new music. When will we be hearing it? What are we going to hear? Tell us all about it.
Well, I have just released a single called Space and Time, and it's available on all digital and streaming platforms everywhere worldwide. And I've also released the music video, which I shot in my backyard, where I go to look up at the stars and look at the wildlife and the animals. I've been here stationary right off of tour in March. I went home to the East Coast of the US, and I haven't visited another state since March. And so I've really had to go outside and exercise, etc., and go outside at night and look up at those constellations and planets and use my night sky app to get back to why I'm here, what my purpose is, and appreciate and realign with the sounds of nature and the simple things in life. Because once upon a time, the world as we know it had us chasing things that we don't even need. And we got into a monotonous routine of just chasing this idea of acceptance and success. So I'm done with that right now. And I'm really, first of all, I'm forced to be stationary because it's not safe outside, but it's also allowed me to reconnect with family, see friends that I haven't seen in years, cook for family, and do things that are priceless. And so a reassessment. So Space and Time is the new single, and it's about allowing yourself guilt-free permission to unplug from the world and get into you and heal.
And heal. We need healing, that's for sure.
Thank you for giving us your open spirit.
Yes. Amazing.
I hope when I said vulnerability, you weren't offended. I'm obsessed with Brene Brown. I don't know if you know Brene Brown, but she talks about like to really grow in your life, your spirit has to be open and vulnerable to like accept everything that's there for you. So I hope you didn't think like I was like, oh, you're like this person is crying. I'm like, no, you're a badass as well, believe me. But you're like, you've got this beauty about you. Your spirit is beautiful and open. And I was like, I just wanted you to know that that's what I thought. And I also still think you could kick my ass if I get her badass as well. You could knock me down if you wanted to.
Right.
Yeah. That was refreshing to hear because I struggle with that, in this business. I'm usually very not cold, but closed off, especially around men, because of trust issues. But that's refreshing to hear on the other side because I don't hear it enough. And I always think that I struggle with that area in my life. So I was kind of shocked. That's all.
I feel very connected to you. Will you marry me?
Yeah. This is the proposal. It's going down now.
Yes. So this is why we asked you here today because
it's a whole proposal.
She's the ring bearer.
Yes.
She's doing her best to like.
I know. I will usher this in. I'll be the path.
So much. And where can we now?
Yes. Where can we find you, Maya?
Oh my goodness. Well, you can find me on social media at Maya Planet 9. That's with the number 9.
Yes.
And my website is mayamaya.com/lifestyle if you want to get the vegan guide, events if you want to, just kind of keep up with the virtual shows that I'm going to be doing. But yeah, mayamaya.com is my website. That's where you can find me.
Very nice.
And you can find us on Women on Top Official on Instagram.
And Women on Top Official on Facebook.
And
no.
Oh my gosh, you got it wrong. She never gets it wrong, and she always pays me out.
Never get it wrong.
You never get it wrong.
Damn it! Now I've got one to hold over, guys.
Yes.
Are you control freaks?
Yes.
Kind of.
Is that where the title "Woman on Top" came from?
Woman on top with a whip. Just kidding.
Yes. And a saddle.
I know.
Yeah. We know how to sit on you and tell you No, it's about all of it, It's like it can be any way that goes down any path.
We're here for it. We're here for it.
Women on top in business and in any other place you want to be.
Yeah. Because we like it every which way, don't we?
Yeah. Well, now that I'm tired and 2 kids, I'm probably just on my back, but sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to let you go. I am Cameron Sursock.
And I am Roxy Manning.
And we are
Women on Top.